Hey YouTube, it's Alec from the Underground. So, since it's evident due to my obsession with Nordics that I'll probably be making a lot of Nordic videos and any sort of deck that I pervert with any sort of Nordic tech, I decided to take a couple minutes to actually make kind of a video for reference for how Nordics play and such. So, reporting from my makeshift studio, here it goes. Da 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 da. Alright, this is my little setup I made for you. Now, out of all the Nordic archetypes, Nordic Beast, the Nordic Alpha, and the Nordic Ascendant, the Nordic Beast are really the only ones that are really like strong, kind of strong, like able to be strong competitively. The rest of them are kind of bad, and these are really the only ones that can stay on par. So if you want to play Nordics competitively, get used to Thor. Other than that, the card that really kind of makes the deck, the Heart and Soul, is this Black Goat right here, Tanjostner of the Nordic Beast. If you can't read his effect, when a monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon him from your hand. Whenever he's switched from defense position to attack position, you can special summon a Nordic Beast from your deck onto the field. Now, the Nordic Beast that you will usually be choosing from are Goldfax of the Nordic Beast, who's a level 4 light tuner, and Tangrisnir of the Nordic Beast, who is a level 3 non-tuner. Now, there's also a level 4 non-tuner, but I don't know if you would ever play him because his effect's bad and it doesn't really help you, because essentially by using this guy, you can go into any rank 3 or level 7 that your heart desires, which is just really good. There's a whole lot when you're playing Nordics. You really want to time it so that you can get him on the field. Another way to get him on the field is to use Super Nimble Mega Hamster, because when Super Nimble Mega Hamster is flipped, you can special summon a level 3 or lower beast from your deck to the field in face-down defense position, and when he says switched from defense to attack, he does not care if that's from face-down defense position to face-up attack position. So if you flip him up, you can go ahead and get the special summon. And Tangrisnir's effect is when he's destroyed by battle, you can make 2 tokens. That's really, it's not too great. In a given Nordic deck, you can actually get away with only playing him at 1 if you don't want to, or you can actually get away with only playing Goldfax at 1. It's really your preference. I have 3 and 2 because that's the number I like to play between Goldfax and him, because they don't really have stellar effects. Goldfax is a Cyber Dragon if your opponent has a Synchro out, which was probably really good when people, I mean, not probably, it was really good when people played Synchros all the time, but given that nobody does that anymore, it's just kind of a 1600 vanilla that you're stuck with. This, when it's destroyed by battle, you get 2 tokens. If you have Sexy Goat tokens, then your opponent will take like 5 minutes and admire them, which can draw you closer to time, if that's your style. Not really. But that just makes it more good. You can also summon him off Hamster. If you have a Goldfax in your hand, summoning this off Hamster can be really good, because a lot of times this deck has really good OTK endurance, because if you only have 1 set card, your opponent's going to go off. But like if that set card's a Hamster and you can search this guy, you can actually block 4 attacks. 1 from him, 1 from him, 2 from the tokens. And if your opponent only has like 3 attackers on the field, you can also go for this, get your 2 tokens. Your opponent won't be able to kill the last one, and then you can go ahead and summon him and make your level 7 with the last tokens, because these tokens are level 3, and people don't realize that, but this guy's tokens are level 3, guys. That means you can make level 7s with him. If you have 2 of them, you can make 4. So you're like, Alec, that sounds like a really ideal situation. Like, you're not always going to have the cards you want in your hand all the time, which is kind of true. But in order to help with that consistency, we get Gleipnir, the fetters of plussing off MST, because it's basically their Rhoda, but their Rhoda is a trap card. So if they try to MST this, you can go ahead and kind of guess what situation you're going to be put in. Grab your tuner, your chump blocker, or your tour guide destroyed by battle thing, depending on what the situation calls for. Also, because it's a trap card, what's really useful is you don't have to activate this until the last second possible. Like, if you have Rhoda and you're anticipating, like, you don't know what's going to happen during your opponent's turn, so you don't really know what to grab. But during your opponent's turn, if you automatically see that they're going to be in a situation where this is going to be the bane of their existence, you can go ahead and grab it during your opponent's turn. So what's especially useful to do is, of course, you flip this after they declare their attack on your monster that you know is going to be destroyed by battle. You grab him, your monster gets run over, you summon him in defense mode, and on your turn, you go ahead, change him to attack position, and go off. I kind of already mentioned this, but they kind of have a little support engine down here, at least what I consider their little support engine, which is Super Noble Mega Hamsters and Raikou. Because you can grab the Raikou off the Super Noble Mega Hamster, it's really consistent. The milling kind of sucks because you don't really want to mill a lot in Nordics, but it's really a necessary evil because this guy gives you a lot of destruction power to get rid of side deck cards you don't like, to get rid of boss monsters you don't like. And it just kind of adds that destruction element that things like it's like Dino Rabbit can't get over Spirit Reaper half the time because they have a giant problem with just getting rid of stuff. Like, their expectation is in order to get over stuff, they're either going to beat over it or negate its effect with Dolka. But with Nordics, you never really have to worry about that because you have this easy-to-search Raikou that you can just go ahead and bring out and pop over any, problem cards just to keep the game moving in your favor. This just recently came off the ban list, and I'm not sure whether or not this is an official part of this engine, but I kind of think it is. I've been playing it a lot, and it really does work well because it's an out to Thunder King, which always sucks when you're playing. Thunder King's just awful if you're playing an extra deck-based deck because they're going to wait for you to commit more than one of your monsters into a single monster and then negate that summon and go plus. But this is an answer to Thunder King. This also allows you to reuse hamsters and Raikous, which, you don't think it happens a lot, but it actually does because 1800 is fat. They will hit this and then they won't die. You can special summon this off this if it doesn't die and they're out of attacks, which is just kind of a part of playing Nordics, is you have to know when they're out of attacks, because when they're out of attacks, you can drop him, and then they can't do anything. They're out of attacks. But if you drop him before they're out of attacks, you better make sure the rest of their attacks don't have more than 1,100, else you're just going to get him run over again. Unless you're in a desperate situation, you need to special summon him so that he can die and you can go into a second one, which does happen. The great thing about Nordics is, like, kind of one of their signature cards seems to be Trap Stun, because we've now entered into a format where people want to summon their Logia set 5, summon their hero set 5. Like, if you're either with back row this format or you're against it. If you're with back row, then Trap Stun just makes the Nordic matchup really good against you, because you Trap Stun with your Tranjosner out, and then you can Tranjosner into this guy. You can go straight into Black Rose Dragon. You can plus like 4 or 5 off that play and just leave your opponent's back row devastated because they were relying on their Psalms and their Starlights to save them. And people don't expect this anymore. Like, it's like you have your Judgment or you lose, and if you Judgment it, you Judgment it. And some people are dumb, like, they won't even Judgment it. They'll be like, oh, it's just a Trap Stun, he's probably just going to make Thor, and then I can go off with all my trap cards and protect myself next turn. You just blow their field up, just like Tactical Black Rose Inbound. If they are against back row, then they're playing a bunch of monsters, and that is where Thor comes in, because this guy is a freaking boss. So, in your typical non-back row deck, the problem is if they kill him, it's not his effect's good. Like, his effect to negate all of your opponent's effects, it's like skill draining their field, so he can get rid of a lot of problem cards like Spirit Reaper. He can one hit over a Zen Mains, one hit over a Gotchi. So he's really good for getting rid of your opponent's like stall cards when they're playing those really monster heavy decks, because that's typically how they protect themselves. And you can just get in there and get the job done. What makes him really particularly good is the fact that him and all the other Nordic gods self-revive, and his self-revive effect is by far the worst. Like, he just burns them for 800. Like, Odin lets you draw a card, and Loki lets you revive a trap. His self-revive effect is kind of awful, but the fact that it is a self-revive, and that he has 3,500 attack, means that your opponent's spell card answers to him, Dark Hole, their Torrentials, their Mirror Forces, are not going to be able to solve this guy. If they're playing a monster-heavy deck, that means they're only, like, if they're playing a monster-heavy deck, they typically only have two answers, and that is Blackluster Soldier and Chaos Sorcerer. And if you save your Effect Veilers and your Solemns for those two cards, you just win, because they can't beat 3,500. So, despite the fact, like, in a lot of my builds, you'll see me playing 2 MST, 2 of these, sometimes I'll even be playing 3 of these. It's something I'm considering. And in other builds, I'll play things like Breaker and stuff, which hate the back row. Like, your Chaos Dragon matchup is actually really good just because you have this guy. And your Agent matchup, like, if they're playing those new Card Trooper agents where they don't play any back row whatsoever, because you play this guy, it really doesn't matter how much spell trap hate you play, you're typically going to have a good matchup, because they cannot beat this, because he is a 3,500 self-reviving boss. So that's just really kind of the stuff that makes Nordics unique. I guess that's really kind of the basics behind the deck. If I missed anything, I'll come back to it, maybe do a more complicated one later. The other synchro that I guess I'll premiere, because I feel like I have to, is Ancient Sacred Wyvern, because this card was almost just like made for this deck, because this level 4 horse tuner is light, and you sync him into a level 3 and you can make this thing. And if your opponent has solemned something already, and you're still at full life points, he'll come out at like 4,000 attack points easy. And this is really how you steal games, because Nordics are a really defensive deck. You're typically like setting him with, you can set the Black Goat with protection. If you know you can make your Black Goat set, if you know you can make this last through the first turn, then by all means set it, make it last through the first turn, flip summon it, get its effect to special summon, go off from there. And, wow, I just lost my place when I went off on the Blackout tangent. But yeah, Ancient Sacred Wyvern is a boss, because he will typically come out with absurd amounts of... Oh yeah, that's right. Because the deck's really defensive, this is kind of your offensive turnaround. Once you've wore your opponent down, and you don't want them to top deck that Miracle Fusion, that Reborn, whatever it is that their deck top decks that is just going to make you really mad. You want to end the game before you see it. This is a game ender. You make him, you end the game before your opponent can do anything about it. Another card that's actually becoming increasingly good for this deck is Ancient Fairy Dragon, because Madolches are coming out, and that new Spellbook stuff's coming out, and it doesn't really beat the Tier 1, but it kicks the butt of all of the Tier 2. Like, Gravekeepers... Nordics have an absurd Gravekeeper matchup, because you can play this. Like, Spellbooks, you just eat that tower before it can do anything, gain 1,000, like I said, it's not going to help you. It kind of helps it helps the Dark World matchup, but the Dark World matchup sucks. I'm sorry, guys. So does the Insector matchup. Don't play this deck if you like have 20 people at your locals who are playing Insectors, because you won't win. I'm sorry. Like, go ahead and side 15 cards for them, but by the time you've sided 15 cards for them, like, you're going to have such a bad matchup against everything else if you side 15 cards to stop the Insector matchup that you're not going to be running your deck at an optimum pace. Mermails, I don't have too much play testing against. They really seem to be playing like I'm against back row deck, in which case you just get this guy out and win. But Mermails they're better at stopping you from making this guy because they have the random destruction. But it's not as bad. Mermails are not as bad as Insectors are for this deck. So if you're concerned about Mermails, like, just kind of tech your main deck against it. I'm not going to go into all my Nordic deck lists because there's a lot of them. Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed. I have like 15 Nordic deck lists. And it would make this video go longer than it already is now, which you're probably getting annoyed with unless you really particularly enjoy Nordic strategy. But, if you don't, just know that this guy is better than this guy, and your opponent doesn't know this because the greatest trick Konami ever pulled was they printed this goat as a secret, and they printed the broken goat as a rare. And people are always looking for shiny cards to do the worst stuff. So if you flip this up, they will panic and wonder what it does because it's shiny. But if they see you duality for this guy, they will not be concerned until you are already through going off with him and completely destroying your opponent. And then they go like, wow. Like, I've even had people tell me, like, wow, I was really concerned with this white goat, but that black goat is busted. I'm like, yeah, it is. Why were you worried about 2 tokens when this guy special summons a tuner from your deck or turns himself into an instant rank 3? Like the reason I got away with him, like the Nordic Rabbit deck that I posted up the other day, was because this guy plus this guy makes this guy, and all of a sudden you're just staring at a tour guide. It's a beast tour guide, but it's a tour guide. So, depending on what you feel like doing with the Nordics, you can play a lot of level 4s because Goldfax plus the level 4 is level 8. You can keep him around. And what's cool about him is you can actually reuse him. Like, if you can get him to survive 3 turns, which I've done before, it's kind of difficult where you can switch him to defense, switch him to attack, and then you can switch him to defense and switch him to attack again and go off with him again if you can protect him for that long. It's hard to do, but in a situation where you draw a lot of back row, you can do it. So it's really kind of where we're at. Play a lot of level 3s or a lot of level 4s, and just depending on what you do with what kind of other engines you throw into your Nordic deck, because it's a large engine, but it won't make the entire deck. You're going to have to add things like Breaker's a personal favorite of mine. Breaker the Magical Warrior, I love him in this deck. Photon Saber Tiger is another one I really like doing, where you play the 3 Photon Saber Tigers, and just know what kind of boss monsters you're making. If you're playing level 4s, you're going to go into a lot of level 8s, so pick good level 8s. If you're adding additional level 3s, then know that you're going to be going into rank 3s a lot more often, and play, a more extensive rank 3 lineup for your extra deck. Like, besides Black Rose, Thor, Ancient Sacred Wyvern, and besides these 3, like, anything else is really fair game. If you're going to be playing Trap Suns and anticipating back row, you can Black Rose twice. Go for it, because I've done it before. Like, because people who are concerned won't set all of their back row, even if they have protection for it, you can Trap Stun, Black Rose them, and then when they think they're safe, they'll set the rest, and then you can Black Rose them again, because this deck makes it like it's nobody's business, which is one of the strengths. You can play tour guide engines in here. You can play... it's really extensive. You can see, how many cards are in here? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16. The Nordic engine's only 17 cards. That leaves 23 cards for you to be creative with. Running back row is good. Don't run too much. Like I said, it just depends on what direction you're going. I've played really monster-heavy versions of this deck. I've played really back row heavy versions of this deck. Because the engine's only 17 cards, you can do so much with it. I mean, just like the last video that came up, I played it in Rabbit. Like, if you're playing Nordics, go nuts. If you need any Nordic tips, I'll do question-answer Nordic videos, if that's what you're up for. Just, comment what you want. If you want the Nordic deck list that I got my Nats invites with, I'll post it as long as you're willing to meet me halfway and go like, Alec, I completely acknowledge that you did this before Mermails were a thing, so I won't be like, why would you play these cards? They're not good against Mermails. Mermails would take this deck, bend it over backwards, and make the Black Goat cry. Well, they didn't exist. So yeah, if you stayed with me for this entire video, thank you very much. If you want me to quit doing videos like this, you can go ahead and tell me that, because, it would save me the time too. So, yeah. Hubbard out, YouTube.